Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Esther Ndongoro, women in ADR. Trying to do a mic check.
Good afternoon.
All right, who am I speaking to? So I know who I'll be working with on the back end.
Jabura.
Sorry?
Jabura.
Jabura. Okay. Oh, fantastic. Yes, I've seen your name a lot. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Can you hear me clearly? Can you see me clearly?
Yes, you're audible and clear.
All right. Fantastic. Maybe you can help me do a bit of housekeeping in terms of questions in the chat. Would you be, in the event that I drop off or I have a network connectivity challenge, would you be able to step in just to keep the conversation going?
No
Or
problem.
would you recommend we does this backup for me?
I could step in, there's no problem.
All right. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Hi, Wanjiko.
Good afternoon, Zippy. How are you?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
Very, very well.
Yes.
Let me also put on my camera.
Yeah,
There you go. I
there
think
you
can
go.
you hear
Nice
me?
to see you.
Okay, fantastic. Also good to see you. We've spoken. I have not put a face to the name.
I know, but I know you.
Oh, is it?
You're a public person.
Oh my goodness. Am I? All right. I hope I have not misbehaved anywhere.
No, you usually don't.
The principal's office.
You're well?
Yes, I am very well.
Okay.
And ready for the session today.
Yes.
Yes. So
Okay.
let's wait and see if our speakers will be able to join us.
Yes.
Then we can do a quick run through
Yes.
and yes, and then take it from there.
Yeah. I can see someone else has joined.
I'm not sure who Esther is, unless it's someone
Yes.
else. Hello, Esther Ndongo.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you're quite clear.
Okay. Zippy was asking you to quickly introduce yourself. You joined quite early, even before me.
No, I was testing it to see whether my Zoom is working.
Oh,
My name is Modoni. I'm a private mediator.
oh, nice to meet you, Modoni.
Yeah.
Excellent. We are doing a quick speakers check, so I hope you won't mind us going into our back-end housekeeping.
No, you do your thing.
All right. Thank you very much, Modoni. Dr. Shali Acheng, good afternoon. Is it good morning? I'm not sure where you're dialing in from. Or is it good evening?
It's good afternoon. Yeah, I'm in Nairobi, so yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for dialing in. And we wanted to do just some quick housekeeping with you. Allow me to introduce my boss who's here before I lose my job as moderator. Over to you, Ms. Zippy Musimi.
Hi, Prof. How are you?
Hi.
We have worked together before.
Yes,
And
I
then we've been
remember.
in meetings, but Zoom takes people away from
Oh, yeah.
meeting. You're well?
Yeah, I'm doing well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So karibu sana. We just want to do a quick rain check, just so that you all meet each other before the bigger game. And thanks for coming in on time. And we're looking forward to an insightful conversation. The afternoon is lit. If you are not here, I don't know where you are. Wanjiko, what do you think?
Indeed.
Yeah.
I hope that we are all safe and but in terms of big shifting conversations, this is it.
Yes.
This is it. This is it.
I think most people are working from home, or if you didn't have to traverse through town, because some people live closer to their working environments. Apparently, if you leave very early and go back very late, then you'll be fine. But I think going back is always the problem. But I think the matatus were not going to go on strike. But you can never know who is on the road.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah. So karibu. I can see Dennis has joined as well.
Yes, Wakili, how are you? Advocate Dennis Owor.
I am very, very fine, thank you.
Excellent.
It's quite a pleasure.
Indeed.
Yes,
Indeed.
yes, yes.
A face to the name to make sure your camera is working.
Is what I'm preparing here.
Good.
Let me see what is happening on my side.
Hey, Dennis.
Hi, how are you?
Very well.
Where is this? Just give me a moment. It's setting up.
That's fine. That's fine. At least we can hear you.
Yeah,
That's the
I'm
advantage of
trying.
coming early.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Just seeing some settings updating themselves.
Not a problem. As they update, Zippy, I had spoken to Jabura. Please forgive me if I mispronounce your name.
Yes.
Earlier, and we were trying to align in the event that I get a technical hitch.
Yes.
Maybe I had requested him to see if they can step in, or are you staying through the session and you can step in for me?
Normally I stay in through the session, but Jabura will be our backup. I think he is in for the setup.
Okay.
He's with someone else in the secretariat. Let me just catch up quickly and confirm that they are both on site.
All right.
So that they do the admissions. So you're not doing admissions and all that.
Thank you.
So
Thank
give me
you.
a sec. I turn off and then I talk to Jabura.
All right. Oh, there you go, Akili.
Quite visible now.
Yes, you are quite visible and audible
Excellent.
as well.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you for putting on your camera. Dr. Acheng earlier had also put on her camera. Does anyone have a presentation that you want to share? Do you want to test your sharing settings?
For me, mine will just be the conversation ongoing. I don't have a presentation I will use. Yeah.
All right. Beautiful.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, both of you.
Yes. I mean, for me, I prefer, I don't like when people look at slides and things. So
Okay.
I like conversations in that flowing way.
You
Because
know, when
I feel it's like a class. When people sit with PowerPoints, then it becomes a class rather than a conversation.
Oh, thank you, Professor. You know, I was so ready with my notebook and pen. I knew here I will make up for the classes I was playing in when I was in school. But
Yeah.
that's fine. That's fine. All right. So allow me to now also go to the flow. Let me share it quickly. Are you able to see my? You can see it?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Fantastic. I just wanted to do a quick run through it. Oh no, am I sharing the right document? Yes, it is. So this is the agenda. Do we feel the allocation of introductions when you're both speaking? 5 to 7 minutes is enough for the starter questions. Do we feel that's sufficient, or I need to add?
I think 5 minutes is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Cheng. Wakili, what about your end?
Fully agree. That time is sufficient. The time breakdown and allocation is quite sufficient.
Oh, fantastic. The second set of questions, which we're calling round 2, is where you delve into the depth of the subject matter. This one I allocated just by top of mind. I don't know that any of us will feel that we'll need a little bit more time here. Dr. Chen?
Yeah, I think it's quite sufficient because that's round 2.
Yes,
Yeah.
round 2. The heavy questions.
Yeah, I think 7 minutes is good. It's not too much because now when we start going, because we are several of us and so I think 7 minutes, 7 to 8, yeah, somewhere there is sufficient.
Okay. We have a buffer at the end of about 13 minutes, so I can
Okay.
easily push this up to 10 minutes because this is where the weight is.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Wakili, what about you?
The time, 5 to 7 minutes is okay with that additional buffer of 3 minutes to make it 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just at least so that that is for the round 3.
No, round 2. I'm still at round 2.
2. Okay, I thought it was the part of round 3 where we are now approaching the final conversations.
No, we are
For
at
me, I'm
round
okay with the 7 minutes. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
the final touch of the conversation is when I can just take the 3 minutes. I carry it there.
Or you can carry your 3 minutes from where to where?
From round 2 to round 3. Yeah.
Oh, I see. I
Yes.
see. Understood. Okay, that's fine. Then we have our Q&A, which I'm hoping that we'll be able to do it in 10 minutes. If not, we can probably cut back on our parting shots because I've given us 5 minutes for parting shots. Okay, and I think that's it.
Ambassador,
Yes.
I may request we don't cut back on the parting shot.
Okay.
The Q&A, if it spills, we can give a disclaimer that we may overrun by 5 to 10 minutes.
Indeed.
If people leave before the questions are answered, we have no control.
That's true.
Because what is important is that we deliver.
Yes.
Because then the pattern shot gives the speaker a moment if there's something they forgot or just, just a call to action.
Indeed.
People need to leave with a call to action.
Indeed.
So I think the Q&A, what we will do is question. You just ask the question and then you wait for an answer. Not too much narrations, no operational issues. What is the question?
Okay.
I think once we do that very clearly, then the speakers will know how to, not the speakers, the participants will just keep themselves to just to the point so that we manage the time well.
Understood.
Thank you.
That's fine. So I will give part of my housekeeping is also the disclaimer at the end in terms of in the event we overrun, if we may ask for some additional time. But I will bring it at the beginning and then also when we're doing the Q&A here. So we leave the parting shot at 5 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Okay.
All right. So I think that's it. Yep. I think I will now go back to Zippy. If you're back, kindly let us know who is giving the closing remarks kindly.
So I'm waiting for Phyllis.
Mm-hmm.
Phyllis Wangwe is in the ExCom of Women in ADR.
Okay.
Responsible for membership and marketing.
All right.
But she has a prior, I think, arbitration commitment at 2:00.
I see.
Just in case she overruns and she's not able to, then I can just do the closing remarks because I'll be in throughout the session.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll get technical support from the Secretariat at Women in ADR.
Okay.
So Jabura will sit throughout the session and you'll be able to give us technical support.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. I think my piece is done. Do we have any questions or clarifications we would like to have cleared before our audience joins us? Anything from you, Dr. Acheng, Wakili?
Yeah, not really. I think there's a Q&A session, right?
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
There is a Q&A session, yes. Right at, let me show you. Yeah, right here. After the third set of questions, there is a Q&A session here.
Okay.
Yes.
Ambassador, sometimes there are people who throw questions on the chat box.
Yes.
And can be a little difficult to follow through. So what do we do? Do I ask the back office to look out for any questions and throw it on the right place?
Yes, that can be done. I will also have an eye on the same. I was trying to log in with a second device, but I don't seem to be able to log in with the same account. So I will try and do that before 2 p.m.
Okay.
So that I can pick them and drop them maybe in the group chat. Are you able to see your WhatsApp when you are on the call? Or where would
Yes,
be
I'm able to.
All right. Okay, fantastic. Advocate, Wakili, are you also able to see
I'm
your
able to see you.
to see your WhatsApp when we are on the call?
Yes, because I'm using the machine for the call.
Okay,
So
fantastic.
it's on the side as well.
All right, excellent. Jabura, would you be able to support us that way to pick the questions in the chat box and drop them in the WhatsApp group? Oh, but
Yeah.
sorry?
I'll take the questions and then send them to the WhatsApp group.
Fantastic.
Okay.
I just realized, Dr. Cheng, I don't
Yes.
think you're in the WhatsApp group of the Pre-Moot webinars.
I am in the WhatsApp group.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yes.
All right. With a different number?
No, with the same number. I mean, I think it's the same group. Let me check if it's the same group because I'm in a group.
The one written
Yeah.
Pre-Moot webinars, where I shared the agenda earlier this morning.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it. So definitely I'm in the group because I've seen it. Oh, you shared it this morning.
Not the one, yes, not the one I shared to you directly.
Oh, then I've not seen it. Probably it's not the same group then.
All right. I don't know who is the admin of this group. It's Flo. Is it possible to add Dr. Cheng to the group? Zippy?
Let me see whether we can do that right now, whether I have the right to admit her when you call.
Flo is the one who's the administrator.
Okay. Let me see if I can add her.
Okay. Just one last question to all of us. Maybe how would you like to be notified in terms of in the event that time is running? Fantastic. You've added her. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
How would you like to be notified? I try to avoid interrupting you. What is the best way in your private inbox, or how do you prefer?
I think privately is good.
On the call, right?
Yeah.
On the call or on WhatsApp?
I think WhatsApp is good because I'm with my phone, so can easily see a message here.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Prof
Wakili?
should be joining us soon, eh?
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I've reshared the link with him.
All right.
Of course, it's an ungodly hour for him.
Okay.
Yeah, but he should be joining soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wakili Dennis, how would you like to be notified? WhatsApp or in chat?
WhatsApp would be good. I think in chat would be a bit distracting, but WhatsApp is okay. Because I have the group WhatsApp opened.
All right. Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you very much. A very warm welcome, Dr. Olajide. Kindly help us pronounce your name properly.
You just did.
Sorry?
You just did very well.
Oh my, I felt like I was biting my tongue. Olajide.
Yes.
Olagunju.
Olagunju, yes. Perfect.
A very warm welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Before
you.
we get started, and apologies for the late hour. I understand it is an ungodly hour, as Ms. Zippy has said.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Good morning, my brother.
Good morning, Sister Zippy. God bless you.
God bless you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in at such an hour.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sister.
All right, thank you very much. Allow us to we've done your mic check. That sounds good. Kindly let's do a camera check. Let's see whether you are good on your camera.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. And it is definitely a pleasure to listen to you again after Africa, the Africa ADR conference.
Yes, sister.
I'm really looking forward to, and I think I'm spoiled for choice. I think twice in 1 week.
Thank you.
All right, great. Do you have a presentation that you'd like to share?
Well, I sent my paper at an upgrade of what I did in Ghana to Zippy to share with the participants.
Yes.
So I don't know how you want to go about it. So that's what I've done. But you send the questions already. That was very good. So I have my notes. I'm sure. I don't think they want to see my notes, but
No.
but if they can share
I think we are good to go, Wanjiko.
Yes.
A lot of webinars, people want to have a conversation.
Yes.
That's
we
fine.
are not, so that people don't feel like we are teaching, we are in class, so that we can have their presence and the ability to take in more. Yes. What we'll do is we will also reshare it in the Women in ADR, where our participants will be able to see and follow you on LinkedIn. I think that would be a good learning.
Okay.
Indeed, Zippy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's out of habit that I ask, just to make sure we are clear on the format of presentation. I think Zippy has also shared with you, Professor, the flow and the agenda.
Yes.
All right.
She did. She kindly did.
Fantastic. So earlier on, before you joined us, we agreed that the second round of questions, we would give it up to right about 10 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
So that's the substance of the presentation. Let me just share quickly. And then I think you can see it, right? This piece, before the nexus, the in-depth conversations here, we'll give a buffer of 3 minutes here. And we will keep the nexus as is. And we will take the questions after here.
Okay.
We are aiming for 10 minutes, may go slightly longer, but I will give the disclaimer at the beginning. And then we will have our 5-minute parting shots.
Yeah. Okay.
Will that work for you?
I believe so. You are following the questions as you send them, right?
Yes, exactly.
And in rounds. Okay. It does make sense.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor. We were at the point of asking whether there are any other questions or clarifications before everybody grabs a glass of water or maybe coffee on your end.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're good. I think we're good to go.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much, Advocate Dennis and Dr. Chiang. We will get back up and moving from about 2 p.m. That's East African time, which is in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You want us to log out? Or...
No. Don't log out. No. Don't log out. You can just put off your camera and mute and wait for everybody else to join us.
Thank you.
A very warm welcome to the Pre-Moot webinar by Women in ADR, as part of the knowledge series, From Conflict to Consensus, the role of mediation in trade-driven economic recovery. We will be starting very shortly. We have an exemplary panel of speakers today, and I'm certain we shall glean exceptional knowledge, and we shall be equipped to be able to understand, especially the nexus between these two elements. So allow us to give ourselves another right about 3 minutes. Is that okay, ZP?
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I allow us to give ourselves another right about 3 minutes to allow our colleagues and our peers to dial in. Then we shall formally get started. Thank you very much for creating the time to join us this afternoon, or morning, or evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. My name is Wanjiko Eria. I'll be your moderator today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. A very, 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 very warm welcome, and thank you for sharing your afternoon, morning, and/or evening with us. My name is Wajiko Wairia. I'm a certified commercial mediator, a Pan-African policy diplomat, and the founder and managing partner of the Gaten Group. And I have the distinct pleasure and honor to be your moderator for today's webinar. Welcome to this knowledge series convened by the Women in ADR Kenya, a space where we just don't talk about dispute resolution. We practice it, we interrogate it, and today we ask you to do something very specific to show us how it moves commerce communities, and economics, from conflict to consensus. Today's conversation belongs entirely to mediation. What it is, what it does, where it works, and where it must not be deployed, and where it must be deployed. How it serves, most importantly, as a tool for economic recovery. A few housekeeping guidelines, if I may say so, before we begin. Our microphones, as always, kindly and very respectfully keep them muted unless invited to speak. All our questions will go straight in the Q&A chat. We have an eye on it, so if anything comes up during the presentation, please feel free to post the questions there. All questions are acceptable. We intend to close by 4 p.m. East African time, that's in 2 hours. However, should the conversation warrant it, we will ask your permission for a short extension. This session is being recorded, and we will share it, and Ms. Zippy will give us the guidelines of how this is done. We have 3 exceptionally distinguished speakers today, and each brings a distinct and irreplaceable dimension to this conversation. A very, very warm welcome. To start us off, we are going to be hearing from a very seasoned mediator. Her name is Miss Zippy, and I will ask her to introduce herself. Having looked at her bio, I feel like I will not do it justice. It is short and brief, but highly, highly packed. She has traversed the world and represented matters mediation and ADR and conciliations across the globe. Allow me to welcome you, Ms. Zippy Musimi, to kindly give us the open remarks before we start. Over to you.
Thank you, Ambassador Wajiko. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, depends on where you're dialing in from. On behalf of Women in ADR, as the chair of the Mediation Subcommittee, I warmly welcome you in today's knowledge series. We have piped a number of webinars between now and August, when we have the Inter-arsity International Pre-Moot competition that will be held for the 4th year and for the 2nd time in USIU. As we know it, it's Lady Justice Joyce Aluoch International Inter-arsity Moot Competition. So what this series and many others that will follow is aimed at is to give us information, is to bring us to awareness, is to bring clarity into our thoughts when we get into the respective spaces. And so as Women in ADR, I'll quickly share with us why we exist. And so our mission is to empower and elevate ADR women practitioners. And how do we do this? We will support you and give you opportunities so that you can excel in your specific field. And so we are guided by a mission that is very specific, and that is inclusivity and diversity in this dialogue. And we do that with a very simple slogan that says position, position, position. So as we do this knowledge series and others that will follow after, that will encourage you to join, we will be asking, come onto the table, be present, participate, partake, and position. We look forward to having a pleasant afternoon. Back to you, Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much, Ms. Zippy. You only chose one credential. It will be great for everybody else to know what you do, but I think towards the end of the conversations, they can get to know you a little better. Thank you very much. So we delve straight into the deliberations for today. Allow me to introduce our very first speaker. Our first speaker has spent decades doing what we are talking about here. Sitting in the rooms with parties where conflict sometimes seems untenable to resolve, but he has guided them towards resolution. Advocate Dennis Owor is a seasoned advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a certified professional mediator with more than 10 years in practice. He has served as a senior legal counsel at the Federation of Women Lawyers in Kenya, FIDA Kenya, heading the Access to Justice Department, through which FIDA Kenya has served over 4 million women and children. FIDA's mediation program achieves a success rate of between 74 to 80%. He's also a legal educator, lecturing at the Kenya School of Law, training the next generation of legal practitioners. He knows the formal legal system in Kenya from the inside, and I'm certain across the globe. He knows the gaps. He knows what mediation offers that the courtroom cannot. Join me in warmly welcoming Advocate Dennis Owor. And I will go straight to a question. I will not allow him to breathe. Advocate Dennis, you have practiced in the courtroom and at the mediation table for over a decade. And you're also responsible for shaping the minds of the lawyers who will fill both spaces in the years to come. From where you sit, what is the single biggest gap that mediation feels that the formal legal system simply cannot? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Wanjiku. I'm very grateful for the accolades. We try to be humble as we are introduced, but you give us such a pack-up that we feel so elated. So the question on the board today is, what is the gap that mediation fills that I would say the litigation aspect or the legal system leaves at hand? And I would put it this way. The legal system focuses a lot on justice and justice alone, but justice and its shape has never been given a proper definition. It has an academic definition. It has a translated definition, but it doesn't have the human definition. So every other time people say justice is what people think it is or what this person feels would apply to them as justice. So that is what litigation would focus on. Mediation would focus on the same thing, justice, but in a different lens. And this is the gap that it fills. The gap that it fills is that it brings about the human personality. You see, the law has no emotion. We always have that particular adage that the law has no feeling, the law has no emotion. It doesn't care about how you feel. It's either the law or the law. But mediation comes back to the table and addresses the human person, the human being, that it is okay that this is happening. However, how can we then proceed in a manner that sees your best interests at heart? Let us not stay with the rigidity of the law, but let us move with that particular practical approach on what can we do from bringing you from this particular point to this other point. In fact, what mediation does, it creates conflict transformation. So you will find that litigation does not necessarily bring about conflict transformation, but only focuses on its resolution. But for mediation, it creates conflict transformation towards a compromise, towards its resolution. So ideally, that is the gap that mediation fills when it comes to the legal system, the legal justice system, as well as the conflict resolution that occurs. Thank you.
Exceptionally powerful. Thank you. Thank you very much. The humanism is what is actually introduced. Thank you very much. Much, much appreciated. Thank you very much, Advocate Dennis. Allow me to introduce our second speaker. Our second speaker asks the questions that others often have not formulated. Dr. Shirley Gabriela Achieng is an assistant professor of criminal justice at USIU Africa, right here in Nairobi, Kenya, and the executive director of the African Network of Critical Security Scholars. She holds a PhD in Peace and Conflict Studies from the University of Otago, New Zealand, where her doctoral thesis on indigenous African approaches to counterterrorism won the 2024 Exceptional Doctoral Thesis Award. Before academia, she spent 8 years in Kenya's civil service, providing policy and technical advice on peace and conflict. Her scholarship bridges counterterrorism, restorative justice, transitional justice, decolonial methodologies, and peace building. What a powerhouse. She is also the co-founder of the Decolonial Terrorism Studies Network, which advocates for African indigenous solutions to African challenges. Join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Shirley Achieng. Dr. Achieng, again, straight to the point. Your scholarship is rooted in indigenous African frameworks, restorative justice, and what happens when formal systems fail people, and dare I say my people. Before we go deeper, why does this conversation about trade and mediation matter from where you sit as a peace and conflict scholar? Over to you, Dr. Achieng.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador Wanjiku, for those very, humbling remarks from you. I pride myself being a decolonial scholar myself. So, the way I will try and, approach the questions is from that particular lens of decoloniality. So looking at the issues of trade and mediation, and trying to look at these two very, side-by-side concepts, coming from the positionality of being a peace and conflict scholar myself. You see, I view this conversation as something that is very highly significant, because these two concepts are highly interconnected. You think about peace building, you think about conflict prevention, you think about how these two actually promote sustainable development. Now, while trade is primarily associated with economic growth and the exchange of goods and services, between communities, mediation, on the other hand, is focused on resolving disputes, through different mechanisms, using mediation, using negotiation, using dialogue. And when put together, these two actually play a very great role in fostering stability within communities. You see, trade matters because trade will reduce the likelihood of escalation towards violent conflict. Because, of course, we've spoken about human relationships. Trade, the aspect of trade itself, is a human element in that, just like my colleague Dennis has just spoken about. There's this humanity in it. When we're trading together, then we are fostering some human relationships. There's aspects of shared interest as we are doing this. There's aspects of cooperation. We are not seeking basically to confront each other when we are conducting trade. What you are seeking to do is to cooperate. So cooperation over confrontation. Now, trade itself creates a myriad of opportunities, whether we are speaking about communities, informal trade, all manner of trade, What is being fostered here is, economic opportunities for everybody. Employment is provided, living standards are improved. For instance, poverty is alleviated. Now, when we try and address some of these issues or conflicts that emanate from trade, what are we essentially trying to do? What we're trying to do is to promote peace in the long run, you know. So trade becomes, let me say, a source of, you know, trade becomes, how do I put it, like a platform, really, or a space, you know, to sort of deal with these human problems that arise out of it, you know, because conflict is bound to come up when people are trading, you know. There'll be disputes of all kinds, you know, disputes over tariffs. You'll find maybe, for example, if you look at East Africa, the way we trade between Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. Of course, Kenya being the regional hegemon in all this. I mean, there's bound to be issues of maybe even trust coming about. You know, do we trust each other even as we are trading with each other? Or, you know, there are countries that feel that maybe Kenya, for example, is getting an upper hand and things like that. There's a class I'm teaching this semester on East Africa in world affairs. And just last week, we were speaking about that trade relationship. Do we trust each other enough, you know, so that we can open our borders? And I asked my class and gave them a challenge. As you walk through the supermarkets in Kenya, do you see any products that come from Uganda, for example? On the shelves, do you see products that come from Tanzania, that come from Rwanda, that come from Burundi or South Sudan? Because we're calling ourselves the East Africa community, you know? So where's the community in that, you know? Why aren't there like so many products that we can see and say? Because for me, I always had a habit of checking behind products ever since I was young. I always turn something to check made in. I mean, it was like a game we used to play when you were small. Even with clothes, I still check to this very day, where are they made in, you know? And how have they found, how have these products found themselves, for example, in Kenya? So in East Africa, do we have this, or we are seeing relationships that, you know, trust is missing from these relationships? We have different interests, but we're in this large community where we are saying, oh, we are trading together and we are doing all these marvelous things together, you see? So rather, when we speak about trade and we speak about mediation, then we are looking at concepts that have a lot of synergy between them, because what you're trying to do is, how do we address disputes, you know, using mediation, you know, because there's bound to be disputes every time we sort of interact in that manner. How do we reduce adversarial approaches? And mediation essentially provides a very good platform for consensus building amongst people, whether it's countries, whether it's in domestic trade. Mediation comes in that way. So mediation for me is essentially a very important tool when resolving trade disputes, because it's a means of building trust amongst stakeholders, because trust is an essential component when you're trying to look at trade. There is no way you trade with people if you cannot trust them, you know. And if we don't trust them, then there's bound to be conflicts that arise from these sorts of relationship. So I mean, just to answer your question, I mean, in a very broad way, why does it matter? You know, why does the conversation about trade and mediation matter? It matters because we are human. It matters because we are operating. You know, there's the aspect. Trade is seen as something that sometimes we remove the humanity from it, because we are discussing profits, we are discussing, oh, this growth of GDP and all these things. But where are the human components of this? Are we really looking at trade from these lenses? That trade can actually bring conflict, and we need to deal with it from a place of humanity rather than a place of confrontation. Because if we seek to continue trading together and being wonderful partners in our various communities, then we need to exercise, you know, trade and mediation from a human-centered perspective. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Cheng. I mean, this is quite profound. It reminds me of a quote I read many years ago that trade thrives where trust exists. Thank you very much. Allow me now to go to our third speaker. Our third speaker has spent over 3 decades building the architecture of mediation across continents. Professor Olajide Olanguju holds a PhD in anthropology and is a professor of conflict resolution and peace building at Bake Graduate University in Texas, USA. I hope I pronounced that right, Professor. You know, when you're speaking in front of professors, you can almost see the red pen. He is a fellow of both the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators and the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators. And he pioneered the professional practice of ADR in Nigeria. He has advised the United Nations, the World Bank, the government of Nigeria, and his council as Federal Special Advisor on Labor and Conflict Management, directly enabled the resolution that unlocked the privatization of Nigeria's electricity sector, a breakthrough that affected electricity supply for over 200 million people across West Africa. He is also the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Conflict Studies, which is published in 10 languages, and his book, How to Resolve Conflict, has been translated into 6 languages. Join me in warmly welcoming Professor Olajide Olanguju. Professor,
Thank
I
you.
will...
Thank you. Thank you so much. I guess I could go on to answer your specific question. Do you have any specific question right now?
Yes, allow me to ask this. Professor, 3 decades building mediation systems across governments, the United Nations, and the World Bank. In plain terms, why does unresolved commercial conflict cost Africa so much? And what is the single most important thing that mediation offers at that level that courtrooms do not? Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm very grateful, Ambassador. So I think that unresolved commercial conflicts impose both direct and structural costs on African economics. So with direct and structural costs. First, there are immediate economic costs, delayed transaction, stalled investments, disrupted supply chains, and increased transactional risk. Businesses become cautious, contracts become more expensive to enforce, and capital either slows or leaves. More importantly, there are systemic costs. When disputes are not resolved efficiently, trust erodes. Trade depends fundamentally on trust. Trust that contracts will be honored, that disagreements will be resolved, and that institutions will function. Once trust is weakened, markets fragment. In the context of because people more critical. What we're trying to build is not just a trade agreement, but a continental market system. Without effective dispute resolution, integration cannot sustain. So what is the one thing else? Is that the second question? Right.
My apologies, Professor.
Ambassador.
We seem to be losing you. I think we lost a bit of what you said at the end.
Okay, I don't know how much you do here.
My apologies. We had your intro, And then you were breaking off a bit, and then towards the end, we could quite hear you. Maybe you can just maybe re-summarize for us. We do not want to miss a word. Over
So
to you.
I began by saying African economics. Then said there are immediate economic transactions, disrupt supply chains, and increase transactions risk. And that businesses become cautious, contracts become more expensive to enforce, and capital either slows down or leaves. And that very importantly, there are systemic, that when disputes are not resolved efficiently, trust erodes. That depends on the speaker before me mentioned, and you mentioned that contracts will be not to be resolved, and that institutions function, and once trust weakens, markets fragment. And that in the context of Africa and Africa, more critical. And so what we're trying to build is not just a trade agreement, but a continental market system. And that without effective dispute resolution, integration cannot be solved. And then on mediation, I believe the second question was on mediation. What is the what mediation would offer? Am I right?
Okay. Sorry about that. We seem to have lost Professor. I'm certain he will join us. He will join us briefly. So allow me to go to the next engagement, even as we wait for him to dial.
Okay, I'm back.
Are you back?
Yeah, I think I'm having a connection issue.
Yes.
Forgive me. That's why I removed the. That's why I removed the video. I don't know if you heard me best last time, so that I could move on to your second.
You're still breaking, Professor. I don't know whether we can respectfully ask you to, maybe you can dial out and come back again. Maybe the network will be better, our professor.
Okay. Okay, yes. I could do that. I could do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies for that technical hiccup. Even as we await Professor to join us, allow me to go back to Advocate Dennis Owor and put him back on the spot again. Advocate Dennis, women are the backbone of cross-border informal trade across East Africa and the continent. Yet, they're also the most exposed when it comes to commercial relationship breakdown. From your decade of practice at FIDA Kenya and a continued practice in the courtroom, what specific mediation and consensus building skills are most essential when parties to a trade dispute, especially where women are involved, are useful? And what mediators constantly and consistently, sometimes unintentionally, get wrong in these rooms? Over to you, Wakili.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Wanjiku. So the question is quite a loaded question because we are not looking at just the national perspective, but we are also looking at the international perspective. We are merging trade, economics, and then we are looking at conflict resolution, more so with the buildup of mediation. So we are looking at the aspect that women have been engaging in trade, but they have not been engaging in trade since time immemorial. Previously, the space was actually built up to accommodate patriarchal nature in trade. And men, whenever they were proceeding with transactions, it was not just simple negotiations on the table, but sometimes war was involved. Actually, in this day and age, you will still find war being involved in trade discussions and trade concessions in different parts of the world, just to be able to get, if it is called an economic advantage. But now, previously it was war through soldiers, but now it has changed to war through technology, through biotechnology and bioweapons, and threats, and as well as other things that different countries would bring on board. So with that particular approach in mind, you will find that in the current day and age, and the growing number of women entering the trade sector, the economic sector, and international discussions, you will find that one of the key things that mediators should put in mind is the cross-cultural understanding. Even before the gender, we just look at the cross cultures. What does negotiation look like in this particular culture as opposed to this other culture? What does mediation and negotiation look like in Rwanda? How does it look like in Kenya? How does it look like in Congo? And so on and so forth, in Ghana, Nigeria. How do you understand these cultures speaking to each other? How then do the women in these different perspectives relate to trade in the different sectors? So most of the time, what people get wrong is using gender disparity to start that particular conversation from the women are weak. And this is the biggest mistake that people make. The women are equally capable to engage in that trade, to engage in that discussion, such that if the mediator enters that room with that perspective, the first thing they will tilt is the power imbalance. You will definitely tilt as a mediator, and you will suffer something called bias. So this particular bias will create a hindrance in you as the mediator from being able to have clear conversational process in the mediation, because every time within you, the reference will be, okay, the woman in this sector is weak, whereas she is equally capable to have sat in that particular table, to have negotiated in that economic trade aspect, and to be involved in the transactions at an international level. So the first quick thing, aside from the cross culture, is to also come to an understanding that by the time these people are seated on the table, let us discuss the business on the table. Let us look at the negotiation process without having gender disparity, so that by the time you're able to sit there, you are doing the power balance in a manner that has dignity and in a manner that actually respects the business of the day. So that aspect of having a biased lens is what hinders the aspect that when the mediator sits on that table, when the mediator is looking at these parties, they get lost in the conversation and they may actually lose track, because the business of the day is how will we relate? How will we relate in terms of realizing the trade of whatever we are trading in, be it shares, be it agricultural aspects. And you will find that actually nowadays is a lot of women involved in agriculture, so women involved in technology. So all those spheres have to come into place. Once you've been able to understand the cross-cultural understanding, you have to also go to the second aspect, which is the technical expertise of the day. Always realize that different cadres come on the table, as opposed to litigants where it will be parties with one issue. When it comes to international trade or trade between nations, you will find that it will be technical expertise that comes to the table. So if the mediator comes without the technical know-how, they may end up having a conversation without the parties being involved. They may actually lose the entire concept of what it means from moving this conversation from this technical expert to this technical expert. So you'll have economists in the room, you'll have business stakeholders in the room, you'll even have diplomats and sometimes even presidents in the room. So you have to know, how do we balance politics, business, and technical expertise like economism? So those are the different things that one would actually pay attention to as a mediator. Thank you.
Wow, exceptional. You have covered three key things. One, the cross-border lens. Two, it's very important to sense check your bias, and then the technical expertise. Thank you very much. Allow me to head back to Dr. Achieng. Dr. Achieng, your doctoral research is built on a central argument that African problems require African frameworks, not transplanted foreign systems. Applying this here, in the context of trade-driven conflicts, which you spoke to earlier, disputes between communities across borders, between informal traders and institutional actors, what do indigenous and restorative justice frameworks offer? And I'm sure we all have definitions to this, Dr. Cheng, so you'll forgive us. We're here to learn and also understand this deeply. That formal mediation models imported externally do not have. Over to you, Dr. Cheng.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador. I really love that question. Because it's a question that speaks to, our Africanity, essentially, because we are Africans and Africa is our business, So when we speak about indigenous, what should come to our mind essentially is that this is something that is owned by the community. Because when we speak about indigeneity versus Western models, these two terms are in opposition to one another, because they are two very different concepts that come from different places, not just in terms of time, but also in terms of space, because indigeneity basically speaks to our own African realities, It's way of doing things, it's a way of life for us as Africans, being very collectivist, being very Ubuntu oriented, as opposed to Western models that are very individualistic in that very sense, because when you think about indigenous African models, and we speak about Ubuntu being the very essence of that, and Ubuntu actually stands for, according to the definition, but of course, Desmond Tutu is, I am because we are. And we are therefore because I am, even in the sense of a child is not viewed as your own child, a child is viewed as an entity that is owned by the entire community, and that is essentially how we lived our lives. Even myself, I always tell my students when I was young, would play the whole day. My mother was a high school teacher that time, and we were living in the teachers' quarters. Would run the whole day up to the last house, and where lunch finds you is where you eat lunch. Where dinner finds you is where you're eating dinner, and you come back to the house and everything is fine, because my mom didn't see us as her property. You belong to the whole community. If I'm doing something wrong, then everybody has a right, to discipline me. But this stands in opposition to Western models that are very individualistic, in that sense. And in terms of trade, then you see this coming into light, because now we see these two very different concepts coming from different places. And the Western models that are being transplanted today in the African continent, essentially, this is where we miss the mark, when you are trying to trade with each other as Africans, but using formulas that are not inherently, our own formulas, because these are formulas that has come from a different context, and is transplanted on a reality that does not speak to that formula at all, then you find conflicts now escalate, and we don't know how to deal with this, but we don't understand. I mean, Chinua Achebe himself said in one of his books, he's written and said, a man who does not know where the rain began to beat him cannot say where he dried his body, So as Africans, I think we need to locate where the rain began to beat us, even in terms of the way we are doing trade using foreign formulas that are not speaking to the reality ourselves, even as Africans. I mean, when you look at the indigenous frameworks, for instance, which emphasize stronger communal relationships, because under indigeneity, then I've said before, trust really matters, reputation matters. When you think about even trading, when you started the issues of trade in the African continent, they essentially started as barter trade. And when you look at the whole concept of barter trade, there's a lot of trust that was involved. I mean, look at the trade that was happening in the Swahili coast, way back in the 18th century, for instance. Look at the transatlantic trade that was even going on back then. It's a matter of indigenous knowledge that is fueling this sort of trade. I mean, people memorize trade routes, as they're taking their products from the interior parts of Africa and taking them down to the Swahili coast. There's a lot of memorialization that is going on. There's a lot of trust that is going on between communities. Indigenous models emphasize strong community relationships. I mean, and of course we know that Western models do not essentially emphasize this, because it's individualistic. What am I getting out of this, And this is what brings about conflict, because when we approach relationships in terms of what am I getting out of it, rather than how are we relating? Are we relating in a platform of trust, rather than focusing on getting a very, like one professor, I think is based in the University of Birmingham, he always says, when you approach relationships as you want to get a very big piece of a very small pie, then there's a problem, because in Ubuntu, in African indigenous societies, we think about everybody gets an equal share of the pie. But I mean, Western frameworks, you look at it in terms of trade, I want to get big, and I don't care what this other person gets, I don't care what Tanzania will get, I don't care what Rwanda will get, as long as Kenya will get the big share, then I'm fine. So number two is you find that relationships become very extractive, rather than restorative in nature, African societies focused on, maintaining the health of the people, the health of the land, the health of our relationships, rather than focusing on extraction, for instance. Extraction meaning we are focused on profit, rather than restoring each other, So we approach it as, what did you get? What, in terms of profit, what are we bringing? What are we bringing in? And I mean, that's a very cold way of approaching relationships in our own context that are Ubuntu weaved and connected. I mean, it's a tapestry that is essentially will not work for the African, because we are a collectivist people in that very sense of the way, So, I mean, indigeneity will promote stewardship rather than extraction, because Western models, will be focused on violation, even in terms of violating, look at the way we are trading even with our own minerals. There's a lot of extractive politics that is going on, and it's bringing conflict all the way. Look at the Goma conflict that is happening in the Congo the other day. The center of it is the issues of minerals and trade, and how is it being done. We have become cold and very inhuman and very individualistic in the way we approach some of these things. Another thing as well, the third one is broader definition of value. How do we see value, that comes out of trade? Because as indigenous Africans, then our value is looking at things from, are we healthy as Africans? Are our relationships healthy, even as we are trying to transact and trade with each other? But you see, in the Western model, the value is success, it's GDP, it's profits, it's trade. I mean, how are we doing that? So we define value very differently. Indigenous systems, African systems being indigenous, our value is defined very differently from how the Western models will define that. And that actually creates a lot of resistance and conflicts when it comes to the way we are trying to trade. And of course, competition being the last one over competition, cooperation over competition, because indigenous systems are based on cooperation rather than competition. We don't see each other as competitors when we are trading with each other. We see each other as partners, not approaching this from an antagonistic point of view, but we are trying to build a friendship, something long-term. If we see each other as competitors, will this relationship last for long? Will it stand the test of time if I'm approaching you as a competitor rather than a partner, a trading partner, that can go on and trade for a very long time. So, these two concepts are like oil and water, they cannot even stay, I always say they can't stay in the same room together, they will end up fighting, because the ideas are very, 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 very different. What I'm saying is that, I'm not saying we go back to a pristine past and the way we used to do things and try to bring back that. I'm saying we also need to check who we are as Africans and see what works for us and also what does not work for us, so that we are not inherently in opposition. We are trading, the way we are trading, we are in opposition to our own self. So thank you. I enjoyed the question. So my apologies for speaking too much.
Oh, Dr. Chen, thank you very much. It feels like a masterclass on Ubuntu as an economic and a mediation, and most importantly, a trade infrastructure. So thank you very much for that. That was quite, I must say, quite profound. It feels like we need a whole masterclass with you specifically on that. I was seeing a lot of thumbs up. I was seeing a lot of clapping in the chat. Thank you very much, Dr. Shirley. I believe we do have Professor Olajinde Olanguju back.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
I apologize for my technical issues. This is unusual, but they are doing some upgrade and we are having a challenge with them. I hope you can hear me now. I took off the video because of that. I changed the device. I truly apologize. Can I go on now, Ambassador?
Yes, actually, I'm going to give you 2 questions at a time so that you can connect us to your first response and the current question I want to ask you. So okay. The initial question was 3 decades of building mediation across governments, United Nations, and the World Bank. In plain terms, why does unresolved commercial conflict cost Africa so much? And what is the most important thing mediation offers that our courtrooms do not? And then I will ask you, that was the earlier question, which we couldn't quite hear you, to kindly tie that in with the fact that, Professor, Africa has got 3 frameworks on the table. There's the OHADA, Uniform Act on Mediation, covering 17 states. There's the Singapore Convention and the newly established IOMED, of which Kenya, Nigeria, and many other countries are founding signatories. So truly, the architecture, it exists, yet the implementation on the ground remains thin. So from your perspective and from where you sit,
thank you.
The first question and the second question. What is the structural barrier? And what would genuinely be an African perspective and owned and building on from Dr. Cheng enforcement framework actually look like? I think you can connect the two. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so unresolved commercial conflict imposes both direct and structural cost on African economies. First, there are immediate economic costs, such as delayed transactions, stalled investments, disrupted supply chains, and increased transaction risk.
businesses become cautious, contracts become more expensive to enforce, and capital either slows down or leaves. But more importantly, there are systemic costs. When disputes are not resolved efficiently, trust erodes. You and Cheng already mentioned that. Trade depends fundamentally on trust. Trust that contracts will be honored, that disagreements will be resolved, and that institutions will function. Once trust weakens, markets fragment. In the context of Africa and Africa, this becomes even more critical. What we are trying to build is not just a trade agreement, but a continental market system. And without effective dispute resolution, integration cannot be sustained. On mediation, the single most important thing mediation offers is the restoration of working relationships. Courts resolve disputes by determining who is right and who is wrong. Mediation resolves conflict by addressing what has gone wrong in the relationship. Most commercial disputes are not just legal, they are relational. They involve breakdowns in communication, expectations, and trust. So mediation allows parties to surface underlying interests, rebuild confidence, and create solutions that are both legally workable and commercially sustainable. So in short, courts produce judgments, mediation produces continuity, and continuity is what markets depend on. On the second set of questions in the structural barrier, the core structural barrier is not the absence of legal frameworks. It is the absence of institutional trust and functional integration. Africa now has multiple frameworks. Rather, the Singapore Convention, emerging institutions like IOMED, these provide legal tools. But legal tools alone do not produce effective systems. The real challenge lies in 1, weak enforcement environments, 2, uneven institutional capacity, 3, limited integration between mediation, arbitration, and state systems, like the courts. And critically, number 4, low confidence among commercial actors. In other words, the barrier is not normative, it is operational and relational. I don't know if I've answered your question, if there's a sub-question to that first one on structure. Was there a second sub-question on the issue of structure, Ambassador?
Thank you very much, Professor. You have actually answered both of them very, very concisely and very articulately, and actually challenged that substantively in terms of what the disconnect looks like and the impact it actually has. So thank you very much. Allow me to steer our speakers towards helping us now interconnect all the conversations that we have had. We have had very powerful conversations. And I want now to invite each of our speakers to do a specific thing, to draw a direct line and link between the work that they do, the perspectives they have shared with our conversation of the day. Allow me to start with the advocate, Wakili. Wakili is advocating Kiswahili. Dennis Owor. Wakili, our advocate, from where you sit as a human rights lawyer and a mediator who has seen what conflict does, and allow me to be specific and to build on your earlier sentiments, women's economic lives. What is the direct, measurable cost of gender-based conflict? And allow me to specifically name femicide to trade participation and economic recovery? And as an adjoinder to that question, where does mediation intercept? And how can it intercept before harm becomes not only an economic loss, but actual life loss? Over to you, our advocate.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Wanjiku. As we shift the gears, and I remember I had highlighted about the role of mediation being more of conflict transformation than conflict resolution. When we look at the cost of conflict, sometimes companies usually have that particular measure even within their risk analysis, especially in confirming how much would it actually cost if this conflict was unresolved. I will give and actually use today, it's even a beautiful day, has given us a very good example of the cost of conflict. Businesses have had to be closed today simply because there is a fear of intended conflict, fear, more so because people want to commemorate the finance bill protests, the protests against the finance bill that had happened back in 2024 that led to loss of lives. So when we look at the cost of this conflict, is that there is an economic standstill that has been anticipated just today alone. And when we marry it back to the issues of femicide, most of the time we will find that those who are actually involved in femicide are perhaps people who are, or rather women who are more so in the academic sector, perhaps continuing or approaching the academics at particular levels. At times you find that it is women who are in upper echelons of business who are involved in this particular aspect and targeted by the mere fact of them being in those spaces. So when we come back to calculate the cost, is that once a particular gender sees that we are being targeted because of a particular reason, people tend to shy away. So you'll find the women will shy away from that space and say, that is a space that belongs to men. But the challenge with this is that we will lose women with great accolades, we will lose women with great stature, who have the knowledge and know-how to be able to steer the conversation in a different direction. So I come back to what the professor and Dr. Shirley had been indicating, and I will tie it up into something. One of the key things that defined Africans was relationships. It was not a matter of how much trade we were having, but what each kingdom was relating with each other. So you will find if it is the kingdom, the Baganda kingdom, what is it trading with? The kingdoms that are within Kenya, that is before the countries were formed through colonization. So this relational aspect is what defined the African mind. And you will find that the gender that brings this relational aspect the most in any trade table is women. So if they are removed from the trade table, the cost is greater. So we'll find that there's a formation of the International Organization of Mediation, that is the IOMED, just recently formed from 30th of May this year. We find if we lack the technical know-how, if we lack institutional strength, we will still be maintaining previous conflict resolution methods that are not tailor-made for Africa. And if we continue with patriarchal perspectives within the trade concept, the cost now becomes immeasurable to the trillions, because once we do not have the perspective of conflict resolution that transforms the conflict into another perspective, that transforms the relationship, then we tend to lose on that bit. Because what mediation comes to answer, and it's the most critical bit, is what perspective do the parties live with from that table? How then do we now come back to the society and decide we are going to respect each other despite the different gender? How will we respect each other if this conflict did not transform? If trade only saw us and we only see each other as money and numbers? How do we then move from money and numbers to the relationships that were fostered ever since back then? You hear Dr. Shali refer to Ubuntu, oneness. This was the cultural perspective of all of us. If we had this oneness, there wouldn't be this gender disparity, there wouldn't be these gender wars, because the moment men and women work together in trade, you tend to find that a lot of economic and GDP growth starts happening. But it doesn't happen because people looked at numbers and were rushing into stock exchange. But it only happened because the relationship between the parties was fostered long enough for them to be able to appreciate what they are each bringing to the table. So the cost is very immense. And ever since femicide was raised, I believe from the 2023 is when people started noticing a pattern. You could find that there was actually a shift in how people viewed, because previously they were not very sure. They would dismiss it as homicide. But now from time to time, they were able to now consider, okay, something is happening. And it's not just happening to anyone. It's happening to many women who are actually seated in positions of power and control, sometimes even happening to even our own judicial officers. So with this particular aspect in mind, you find that when the women shy away from economics and business, we lose in trillions. Thank you.
Wow, very powerful conflict transformation and the impact of women not engaging in trade. Actually, we lose in the trillions. Thank you very much, Lewis. We've seen your question. We'll pick it during the Q&A. And ladies and gentlemen, feel free to continue dropping your questions in the chat. We shall address them during Q&A. Allow me to go back to Dr. Achieng. Dr. Achieng, when justice systems fail communities, when we're building on all our conversations, even coming from what Advocate Dennis Owor has spoken to and what Professor spoke to earlier, the social fabric tears. Well, should I say maybe that's our perspective, we stand guided. And when it tears, the economy collapses. Kindly connect for us concretely. What is the real cost of unresolved conflict to trade-driven economic recovery in Africa? And where does mediation enter as a restoration tool? And I love the fact that you are a decolonial scholar. We may end up having to bring you back for a longer conversation and not just a resolution one. Over to you, Dr. Shali.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador Wanjiku. I mean, when we think about, the conflicts that arise out of trade and, and one of the things I think we really need to stop and reflect on is at what point do we need to actually curb this so that it doesn't become a runaway sort of conflict that cannot be contained, when we think about various models to dealing with conflict, one of the models I would invoke here is, for example, when you see conflict in terms of the 9 stages of conflict, you start with hardening, which is stage 1, where we have very firm viewpoints, even concerning issues of trade, coming from different ideological perspectives, bringing East Africa in mind here, because we're essentially different even in the way we think and the way we conduct trade, and essentially the values that we stand for. If you look at Tanzania coming from a place of ujamaa and the way Julius Nyerere introduced these concepts of African socialism in Tanzania versus the way Jomo Kenyatta, our first president, introduced the aspect of capitalism in Kenya. It is the way that we drive ourselves using these ideologies, even in the way that we come and talk about trading. And I mean, these ideological differences will sort of create tension, you know, even when you sit on the table together and try and discuss, you know, what comes out of it is the way that we view ourselves through these models. Now, to think about conflict again, using, for example, the iceberg model, because when you speak about the iceberg, then an iceberg is something that you see just the tip of it on the ocean, but at the bottom there's very invisible mountain that is submerged in the water. A lot of us as mediators, sometimes we just focus on the visible aspects of conflict when it comes to issues of trade, where we are just thinking about, oh, what are the disputes that are rising because of tariffs? What are the trade sanctions that are here, you know? Which countries are essentially withdrawing, you know, their strikes and their public accusations, for example, between trading partners. These are the visible aspects that we can see, which form part of the tip of the iceberg. And that is where most mediators will be focusing on. By the time you're seeing a strike and people accusing each other and some are withdrawing even from trade agreements, that is not where as mediators we should put the focus on, because we should go down and into the deep water and look at this submerged piece of, you know, this mountain that is inside the water that we cannot see, you know, and these are the interests of these countries. What are our ideologies? What are the perceptions that we have about each other? What fears are we bringing here? What values, essentially, are we promoting? You know, thinking about Kenyans from inception after our independence, then we were Harambee-driven societies. Even today, I mean, the Gen Zs may not understand this, because it's the Gen Zs that I interact with and teach every day. And I tell, do you hear your parents every day saying, I'm going for a Harambee? How many of you know what that means? Only 2 out of 50 students raise their hands, you know, because Kenya is driven by Harambee. It's a very collectivist sort of thing that is sort of dying today, you know, because we are sorting out our own issues our own way in our own households. We do not involve people. We don't share our problems with others, you know. So why don't we do this? Is it a perception issue? We fear the way it would be viewed, even in terms of, you know, are these your partners? Are these your competitors? Why can't you share your fears, you know, with the people that you trade with? You know, we don't want to understand each other in this way. And just to, you know, juxtapose that on the question that you ask here, you know, what is the cost of this unresolved trade conflict, and positioning mediation there as a restorative tool. When you think about trade agreements, then you see that they are designed for, you know, to promote market access, to promote all this manner of economic cooperation, to strengthen relationships. It's an agreement that you are doing, but essentially disputes still arise out of this. Now, when we agree and we have a trade agreement and these agreements are left, you know, the disagreements that arise are left unresolved, you know, then we are going to reach stage 9 of the conflict, which is known as together in the abyss. When you are together in the abyss, you do not care about your trade interests. You also do not care about the trade interests of your partner. What you're fixated about is annihilation. You want to destroy each other. It's about burning bridges completely, you know. That is now the last stage of the conflict, because we are so focused on dealing with, you know, with the visible aspects that we can see. We are not diving deep to understand each other as partners of trade, you know, what essentially our values, our interests, you know, and it's a very costly war, essentially. It's extremely costly because, I mean, it will take lives, it will take property, it will take a lot of things out of countries, essentially, when we have these prolonged disputes, you know, and restrictions against each other, you know, and of course, the cost of living is going to escalate for a lot of people. There'll be disruptive supply chains when you look at that in that sense. And there's a lot of uncertainty as well. Investors will lose confidence. They will no longer be investing, you know, even in these countries, because the economic growth is essentially slowed down, and people become very vulnerable in this sort of states, you know. So essentially, I think as mediators, before we get here, then we have to invoke, you know, very restorative mechanisms. What is restoration? Because restorative comes from the word restoring, you know, restore back. Because when you're trying to restore, it means something was taken away from you. You know, essentially, locate what was taken away from you. Was it trust, you know, that was taken away out of these trading relationships that we had? Then restore that, you know. Was it the essence of communal ownership, for instance? Because again, when trade partners feel that, you know, then they don't own the process, then conflicts are bound to arise out of this, you know. Are people burdened by these relationships, you know? So what essentially mediators are concerned about, should be concerned about, is restoring this through restorative processes as a tool, you know, to bring back what was taken away, to restore back, you know, what was, you know, destroyed, you know, from these sort of relationships. You're focused on repairing a relationship that is essentially damaged, you know, by that point, because when we reach stage 9 together in the abyss, there is no relationship that we are talking about. When we are looking at each other and saying, I mean, I need to destroy this person, you know, as a trade partner. I do not, the trade, even the goods you're now dealing with, the services, they do not matter at this stage. You're just focused on, I mean, yourself, you also don't care about your own portion, you know, of this relationship and whatever is left out of it. So mediation will come about to promote very, you know, to preserve a relationship, you know, that essentially has been destroyed because of conflict, you know, and it will help to restore, maintain relationship and reduce the likelihood of future conflict. So just to summarize your question, I mean, what essentially can we do to stop this? Is, as mediators, we have to put on our swimming gear, you know, and swim down to the bottom of the iceberg and find out what essentially is the real issues, the underlying problems, you know, that is causing these trade conflicts, that, you know, issues that arise out of trade. We don't trust each other. We have different ideologies. We come from different positionalities, even as East Africans, for example, and our partners as well in West Africa, very different positionalities, even with people from South Africa, you know. So it's essentially that is, you know, what mediators should be looking at, rather than just focusing on the surface value of the trade agreements. At the bottom, there are very, very serious issues that are not visible to the naked eye. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Chen. And I think I will add a question to the Q&A for you to unpack for us what exactly is restorative justice and how this can be unpacked. Before we proceed, allow me to acknowledge our chair of the women in ADR. I have not only seen her on the call, but I see she's also shared a question. Eunice Lumalas, thank you very much for being part of our conversation today. So before we go into the Q&A, and we have quite a number of questions, allow me to go back to Professor to ask you, Professor, you turned a major labor conflict, and must I say a trade conflict in Nigeria's energy sector, into a macroeconomic intervention that unlocked electricity supply for 5 West African countries. What would it take to deploy the same logic, the same mechanism, the same methodology within ACTFA, within the ACTFA trade architecture, And what might be standing in our way? Professor,
thank you. I'm very grateful, and I thank my this panelists for their contribution. Permit me first to address something that is coming up from the discussion. And I think actually you asked me earlier, but I didn't address it. What would a genuinely African-owned enforcement and dispute resolution framework look like? And briefly, I need to say that this is what we need to be addressing, because there is the issue of values and what we are bringing to the board and what is important for us as African, especially looking at it as people who support African business. And I think a genuinely African-owned dispute resolution and enforcement framework will combine three elements quickly. One, institutional integration. Mediation, arbitration, and courts must operate as a coordinated system, not as isolated mechanisms. Two, regional enforcement coherence. It must allow cross-border recognition and enforcement of outcomes, particularly mediated settlements, without excessive procedural duplication. This is where the Singapore Convention becomes critical. And finally, relational legitimacy. It must reflect Africa's long-standing traditions of consensus, dialogue, and reconciliation, not simply transplant adversarial models. Thinking along those lines, it would not just be a legal framework, it would be an ecosystem grounded in how conflicts are actually experienced and resolved in the African context. And then quickly back to what we tried to do in Nigeria in 2012. One second, please. So first of all, to say that effective conflict resolution under AFTA requires recognizing that it is not, that effective conflict resolution is not peripheral to economic policy. It is central to it, which is what is missing now in the AFTA as we speak. It is not being addressed. Now, an effective dispute resolution under AFTA, like I said, recognizing that it is not peripheral, but to economic policy, but similar to it, is illustrated by the energy sector case that you referred to, where the turning point lay in reframing that conflict from a labor dispute to a relational issue, emphasis on relationship, to a relational issue between the president of the electricity generating state, at that time it was President Jonathan, and the labor unions, and thereby shifting the engagement from positional bargaining to relational problem solving. That's the same logic applies under ACTA. Trade disputes are not isolated events, but friction points within an interconnected continental system, and must therefore be approached as a relational disruptions rather than purely legal disagreements. My Pentagon framework, I shared my last article with the organizers. I'm sure they will share it with others later. My Pentagon framework, to which the article speaks, provides a structured means of understanding and managing this dynamic, as the initial framing reflects. The initial framing in the framework reflects a limitation at the hearing stage where positions dominate. When people come together, it's about me against you. While the turning point occurs at the hearing stage through reframing, enabling progression to the understanding stage where underlying interests and systemic implications can be addressed. This structural progression from surface level positions to deeper relational insight is precisely what the framework is designed to facilitate, underscoring the need for dispute resolution systems that intervene early, preserve relationships, and sustain the continuity of economic activity across AFTA. And I'm emphasizing that because we need to create, as my other speakers have said, we need to create something that is very sensitive to what suits us best in Africa from coast to coast. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. And indeed, I've shared the article that you have referenced in the chat for all of us to be able to have access to it. But you have actually articulated, and thank you for tying into your earlier responses, what we really must do and where the gaps are. And actually the formula that really it's about relationships, as all our speakers have spoken to today. Thank you very much, Professor. Now we have a series of questions. I think we're not doing too badly on time. Allow me to ask them, and I will request our speakers to probably pick the question, and feel free to unmute or put on your camera if you can to respond to these questions. So the first question was from Lewis, and his question is, no, that's not the first question. The first question from Lewis was, to what extent does Western mediation theory oversimplify African indigenous dispute resolution, transformative versus evaluative and facilitative mediations? I think, Dr. Achen, that sounds like it's down your alley.
Yeah, yeah, I love that question. Is it Lewis Wekesa? Is it the same question? To what extent does Western mediation theory oversimplify African indigenous dispute resolution? Is that the question?
Yes, that's the question.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said before, I mean, these two terms, Western versus indigenous, really different in their very premise. This oversimplification, really, I think, as Africans, we need to ask ourselves one question, because the way mediation is done in the African continent today, it is seen as an alternative, you see. And I've discussed this in many other different forums, that we say we are doing alternative dispute resolution, and we ask ourselves, alternative to what? That is the core question here. Because remember, before the colonialists came into Africa, we already had a whole fleet of very sophisticated dispute resolution mechanisms that were working, and they're still working even today for majority of African societies, But then the introduction of the formal court system sort of threw everything out of balance. And now the mechanisms that were essentially our own mechanisms in Africa then became alternative. And we've embraced the alternative dispute resolution, because I know there's a lot of critique that has been put around that. What is alternative? Alternative to what? Can we just say African dispute resolutions? For example, I remember when Professor PLO came to USIU last year, then he also asked this very question: should we rebaptize the word to African dispute resolutions rather than alternative dispute resolution? So that is one oversimplification right there, putting things in forms of binaries, because Western models tend to see things in binary forms, black or white, good or bad, red or blue. I mean, there's always two parts to everything. So this one is the formal court process, then there is informal court process, and there is all these binaries that as Africans, are they speaking to what we want? So that is one of a simplification right there. And another one, just as a wind up the question, is Western models or Western theory will sort of focus on settlement, or the end game essentially is Do we have a settlement? That is what we ask, even in trade agreements. Do we have a settlement? And we ask ourselves as Africans, is settlement what we want as indigenous people? Because indigeneity, and when you speak about restoration, is not about settlement. It's about restoring relationships. It's about harmony. The way we did things, even in the African system, there's a lot of rituals involved, even when there's a breakdown of social harmony. Wherever there's a dispute, elders will sit, and there is rituals that are being done, there's invocations being done, there's chantations being done. It's not about, oh, we have a settlement at the end of the day. So I think that's a way of oversimplifying, the way sort of indigenous African societies conduct themselves. We are not interested mostly in a settlement. We are interested in restoration and restoring that harmony. Even after a settlement, the settlement is not the end, it is just a means to an end. The end here being restoration. So I hope I've answered your question, Lewis. Should be a whole lecture, actually. It's a very broad question.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Allow me to request Professor to chime in and Advocate Denise Award to chime in before we go into the next question. Professor, over to you.
Yes, indeed. And thanks for giving my challenge with technical issues earlier. Apparently, we've been restored, so that's why I could use my my video now. So it is true, Professor Acheng, it is a whole lecture. That is very true. But let's begin on a very gentle note. The bringing back of ADR is good for Africa too. The first time I heard the concept of ADR was in 1995 in England. So as a Chapman scholar, I had to not just attend my classes, LLM classes, I needed to also be attached to an English law firm. So I was attached to Glover Solicitor. Some of you know Glover Solicitor. It's in West London. And when I got there, my principal, David Miles, said, well, we have this thing we are doing now. It's called ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, and he gave me materials. That's, by the way, that's how I came into mediation and all that. And I looked at it and I said, but this is what we're doing in Africa before you brought the courts. So as an African child, it took me going to England to study to appreciate what we had, what our fathers do, like Professor Acheng said, what our fathers do, our mothers do every day, every time. As a matter of fact, after 31 years of researching and writing books on this, and arriving at the fact that the core thing we do was look at what are the needs? What are the needs in this conflict? What are the needs in this relationship that you made? After doing all that 31 years research, I was listening to Joy. She's online now. She's here in Kubri, and she was talking about her grandmother. And when she was I think was maybe a child, and then her grandmother said, her grandmother would call disputants, sit them down and ask them, what do you need? In other words, what took me so long to learn, that's what they do every day. Our ancestors do every day. And my mediation did not have any meaning because leaving England, coming back to Nigeria to start this practice of ADR and all that, it didn't make sense to me, really. And it only began to make sense when I went to the foot of our ancestors. This is very important. I went to the foot of our ancestors. I sat at their foot, not literal foot, but just looking at what the ancestors were saying. And I started hearing things like Arema Jakusi. I started hearing things like Ubuntu. And I realized that for us, dispute resolution is not about who wins, who loses. It's about our relationship. Like you said earlier, I think it's you or one of the others, I am because you are. My essence is you. I have no meaning, absolutely no meaning outside of you. And so when we're resolving disputes and resolving conflict, we're trying to understand what is in our relationship that's not working, not who is not working or who is working. As a matter of fact, traditional African dispute resolution don't even worry about the individuals. They worry about the ground, the community, that if myself and ambassador are having an issue, a current dispute, the ground is suffering, the community is suffering. And so what's the number one thing for them? How do we heal the ground? How do we heal the community? And both she and myself know that in healing the community, myself and her become one again. It is a different concept of dispute. And so what was the challenge with the Western approach of ADR? What I think happened was that some anthropologists, and I've heard this said somewhere else before, some anthropologists came from the Harvard area to Africa, looked at what we're doing specifically like in Ghana. It's the same thing, what we do is the same thing all over Africa. I can show you, I've been looking at this for a long time. And said, oh, this seems to be better than going to court. They took it to Harvard, repackaged it, and started calling it ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution. So the sin was that it was not properly tagged. So they were right in that sense. The person that came to your school, Professor Cheng, that said, oh, maybe it should be African. It is African Dispute Resolution. But not only African dispute resolution. If you look at other places other than Europe, Asia, and American indigenous people, they have the same concept. And if you research back, as I've done, to thousands of years, 5,000, you see that Europe too had it and lost it to litigation. The law in Europe is what we have in Africa. So it is true that what we have in Africa is not just some byproduct, it's not some downstream product, it is the law. And we must, as Africans, bring it, first of all, we must teach you what it is, what true ADR is, so that it can make sense. And secondly, we must make it part of our law. And that's what after our policymakers, our handlers politically must do. They must put it back, which is what my article was talking about. Thank you. I took so much time, but thank you so much.
No, indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor. Indeed, because really, this is what our ancestors did. And we are truly lost. We have a saying in Kiswahili that kosa mila ni mtumwa, meaning he who forgets where they are from and their culture then becomes a slave, actually. Yes. So thank you very much. Allow me to check in with Advocate Owor if he has a comment before we jump into the next set of questions. Any comment, Wakili?
I wouldn't want to belabor the point that has been succinctly shared by Prof. and Daktari. It is quite clear that ownership is very important for us, and the westernization of mediation and conflict resolution in Africa has made it and has caused some bit of confusion and turmoil, such that the only thing that people keep looking for is what do we own from the ground? How do we make it an African dispute resolution and not alternative dispute resolution? So that is the core. I wouldn't want to really go much further than this, because I've also noted there are several other questions that need a lot of looking into.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Advocate Owor, for that really nice cap to that question. All right, we go to the next question. And I think this professor may be down your alley. Should Africa ignore the Singapore Convention? I believe that's what our chair was referring to, on establishment of the International Organization of Mediation, IOMED, in light of the Singapore Convention, of what use is having both organizations in place? Over to you, Professor. I think this is down your alley.
Okay. I think that we must marry, which is stronger. We must marry the Singapore Convention. Singapore Convention helps us to bring back what we know. What is Singapore Convention? It's saying if it was mediated, if we apply African dispute resolution mechanisms or a variant of it, like alternative dispute resolution, the outcome must be enforceable and must be enforced. So my challenge is not whether we should adopt it or not. We must marry it. Africa must own it. The saddest thing as we speak is that from the literature, most African countries have not adopted it. Can you imagine? This is our own. The Singapore Convention is for Africa. Africa ought to own it. And so my counsel to people like Ambassador who are close to our handlers, political handlers, is they must sign on and they must implement it, both in their individual states laws and as a part of Africa. It must be at the center of Africa. I can't emphasize this more than enough. Then the other question about two organizations, please could you remind me what is the other, which organizations?
No, actually, it was about, the question was, should Africa ignore the Convention on the Establishment of International Organization of Mediation, IOMED, in light of the Singapore Convention? Of what use is having both organizations in place? I think you answered the latter bit. Maybe the first part you can answer. Yes.
I don't see IOMED as I don't see the Singapore Convention as an organization. It's not an organization. It's a tool that helps us to implement whatever agreement will come to, resolution will come to in African dispute resolution, in mediation, if I can put it something more global, mediation. The IOMED could be an organization, that's okay. From the little I've read, IOMED is just Kenya and Nigeria for now, and it's okay. We can have as many organizations as possible. After 31 years, I've been in many organizations. I've helped to found a number of them. If we're talking about merger of organization, what we should be looking at, and frankly speaking, the Anglophone need to listen to this. There is what we call OHADA. The other day, one of the panelists was saying, well, OHADA is Francophone. I don't think it's just Francophone. I think there are people from English speaking who are part of it. There are people from the loss of.
I think we may have, Professor may have frozen, or is it just my end? Zippy, somebody kindly let me know.
No, I think it's at Professor's end.
Okay.
He will pick up when he comes in.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Allow me to go to you, Advocate War. We do have a deadline of 1st of July in Kenya to submit our comments on IOMED to the National Assembly. Being a practitioner of the law in our Kenyan courts and having had the comments from Professor, what would be your thoughts?
Thank you so much, Ambassador Wanjiku. The first quick thought that I have is, in fact, when I look at that particular question, should Kenya really ignore Singapore Convention in the light of IOMED? So rightly put, Singapore Convention is a convention that was supposed to look into how dispute resolution can be done through mediation and its enforcement among the member states. When it comes to IOMED, which was now more African-centered and more formulated by Africa, it becomes International Organization of Mediation or mediators, whichever the case may be. And looking at this, the conversation that is actually brought to light, number one, is ownership. Then number two is state sovereignty. As it is, you will find that there are a number of African states. In fact, they have actually reached 15 who are currently registered as members of IOMED. And the reason the number is higher, because in Singapore Convention, there are only 9 states from Africa. So when you look at that particular comparison, you find that the issue is more about state sovereignty, and secondly, the aspect of ownership. When it comes to dispute resolution formation from different countries, you'll find that different states will treat it differently. Because for the Singapore Convention, you'll find that it is more of the Western states that have registered, Western Asia. But when you come to IOMED, it is more of the African states. So there's usually a principle in international law called the principle of complementarity, whereby the international conventions, there has to be how will it be implemented through national laws and country laws. And most of the time you'll find different constitutions of different states will have a particular article, especially for us, it's Article 2 of the Constitution, that says that treaties and conventions ratified by the Republic will be the ones that can be implemented directly as law within the country. So you will find that Africa will shy away most of the time from international conventions not properly formed within the context of Africa. And that's why you will find, for instance, we have the UN Convention, and then we have the African Charter of Human Rights. So you would wonder, why is it that we keep having two of the same documentation from time to time addressing the same issues? It's usually just the principle of sovereignty, the principle of complementarity, that looks into how do we own this process in a manner that embraces who we are. So that is actually the lens. What is the ownership and how does it mirror state sovereignty without ending up in a situation where one quote unquote would feel colonized per se? So the intention is right, the intention is good, but at the end of the day, it's a matter of state sovereignty, principle of complementarity, and ownership of the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wakili. I think I will have a side conversation with you on that one. And allow me to go to Dr. Achieng as she adds on her comments to the earlier question. Maybe she can kindly, Dr. Achieng, kindly also address the question on how do traders in Africa's market benefit from the trade resolution mechanisms countries have put in place? Can mediation mitigate any gaps, and how, as you add on to the earlier question? Over to you.
Yeah, I mean that's a brilliant question, really, because we have the mechanisms in place, and there's a lot of benefit to these mechanisms. When you think about Africa, then we understand under trade we have the Africa Continental Free Trade area. This very vibrant mechanism that has been put in place, to sort of handle these issues that will arise because there are issues of conflict that also arise under this, and countries can be able to sort out these problems. And just to think about, because you're asking how do traders in the Africa's market, how do they benefit from these mechanisms? And there's a lot of benefit because you get access to a bigger trade market. For instance, under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, in East Africa, we have our very market here, the Common Market Protocol for the East African Community. It exposes all the countries to a larger market, to reduced tariffs in the region, to a more vibrant trading, trading space, for all of us, for the benefit of everybody. And because even as we are interacting in these spaces and these mechanisms that have been put in place to ensure that everybody benefits out of trade, there'll be bound to be conflicts. And therefore, mediation, of course, will help mitigate these challenges. Remember, when we are trading essentially under these organizations ourselves, we are trading there as Africans, because they've been put in place for African countries to be able to do business with ease and to reduce the conflicts that are there. Now, in a scenario where there's conflict coming about, that is where now we invoke, mediation. And I liked what the professor there said about thinking about alternative dispute resolution and how this was baptized in Harvard and brought back for us to consume, not knowing that this is the food that we cooked ourselves The food has gone away, it's repackaged, just like cocoa comes out of Ghana, it is repackaged in Belgium and brought back as chocolate, but the product is yours, So as Africans, I mean, we have the tools. These are our own tools, that we have to use, even in these outfits, that have been put in place to help us. But we need to inject our Africanity, even when we are trying to resolve these conflicts, so that we are relevant, to ourselves and relevant as well to our histories. Last year I really enjoyed the moot courts, competition that happened at USIU Africa, and of course the women NEDR were at the center of that, leading that, and it was really vibrant, to see even some of the students invoking some of these methods that are essentially African in trying to deal with the disputes that were arising from the questions that they were given, trying to sort things out the African way, to sort of see, I mean, how do we, listening to each other, building trust in that, essentially, especially the mediators who were there were really good, trying to invoke all of this and to run ahead to see maybe are there issues of perception here that we need to deal with, are there issues of trust that we need to deal with, understanding that, this is an African context and these elements are very, very crucial, to mediation processes, so that we are not becoming irrelevant in these outfits, and we are concerned about money and numbers and profit vis-a-vis being concerned about the relationships that are intertwined in these trade, agreements and trade agreements and conflicts that even arise out of this. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Chien. It looks like we need probably a 3-week masterclass with all the panelists here to be able to soak in. So I do appreciate that we had aligned on closing at top of the hour. We are 7 minutes to the top of the hour, and I want to request our indulgence. If it's okay, we have, I think, 2 or more questions and a hand as well. Welcome back, Professor. Allow me to ask our audience to give me a thumbs up. We can be able to just overrun by about 15 minutes so that we can be able to answer all the questions and wrap up. Thank you. I have 1 thumbs up. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Welcome back, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll throw you straight into the lion's den, so to speak. As you finish your comments, kindly pick another question from Lewis. We will come back to Zippy's question because I think that is very Kenyan based currently. And I do know we have people from outside Kenya. I see Mangeli Matomela from South Africa and also a colleague from, I believe, Nigeria. So, Professor, as you finish up your comments, kindly also answer this question. How can African mediation jurisprudence grounded in Ujamaa, Nyaism, Ubuntu, African socialism, and consensus-building justice transform women from participants in conflict resolution into sustained and active actors in trade-driven economic recovery and social reconstruction?
Okay. That's a loaded one.
Absolutely.
Thank you for allowing me to round up on my thoughts earlier on. I came back in when the advocate was talking about the legal issues. Well, I say challenges. But I'm happy that I already sent the ambassador to go and solve the problem for us. Yes, there may be challenges with the way the convention was formed, the way HOADA was formed, the way IOED was formed. But what is important is not those legal issues. I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 38 years. So I understand legal issues, legal challenges. But the thing is, what does Africa need? Africa needs one system that is acceptable to all. So if your HOADA is not good enough, okay, it's there. IOED med is not good enough, is there. The convention, Singapore Convention on Mediation is there. Let us find a mix. Let us discuss. Let's ask our political leaders, like Ambassador, to discuss how do we bring something out for Africa that encompasses all this. They are all good. Because the problem with Africa now, by the way, AFTA is the best thing that's happened to Africa. The best thing. I'm using my word carefully. AFTA allows us to trade between Africans. What can be better than that? Nothing. But the problem with AFTA is that it did not put inside the whatever they signed a dispute resolution mechanism for the traders. It talks about how government can resolve the dispute between government and government, but what about the people for whom AFTA was created, which is commercial people? That is the challenge. Now, in talking about how to fashion that, that's why I wrote the article I wrote, which is actually a presentation at the conference we some of us attended together. Let's fashion something so that we will not be trading without knowing what to do when we have disputes. Because dispute is the center of trading. We do commerce to resolve individual conflicts, basic conflicts. So if we can have a solid dispute resolution mechanism fashioned by all the heads of state, helped by their lawyers, it's very, very important. Now, to the issue of women, I will give you an example of Umpobre, whose hand is up there. Joy. She told us at the conference on Monday and on Tuesday and Wednesday, or Wednesday and Thursday, how the women resolve conflict. It's not the first time I'm hearing it. Our grandmothers appear to have been central. Now, the fact that women are quiet, they don't make, doesn't mean they are not there. They are very much there. At the conference that we had on Wednesday and Thursday, June 19 and 20, the best part of that section was the women's section. I think it was tagged something like Women in ADR, something like that. They had their own section. That was the best part of it. In other words, there's something that we are losing by not putting women at the center. And I'm not saying that to make you happy. I know that most of you are women. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we desperately need you. But one thing must happen. The women must stop waiting for being invited. You must jump in. And you must insist that we are better mediators. Because you have the characteristics of good mediators. And so you must provide leadership. I don't have any excuse about that. You can say anything you like, but I don't have any excuse about it. The women must eat. Well, if you don't like the issue of women being in front, side by side with men mediators. And some of the things I'm asking us to do for ACTA, for example, putting this relational mechanism at the center, it's women that probably understand it more. And by the way, don't you, from our experience, all my grandmothers, they were traders. That was when you didn't have too many borders and so on, trading across borders, across regions. My auntie was trading in Ghana and did very well. So for the sake of women themselves, who are traders, who are great, great traders, for as long as we can remember, they must ensure that they lead in this conflict dispute and ensure that mediation is at the center. Amicable dispute resolution mechanism is at the center. That is a task for them. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. And you have captured it exceptionally well. The Africa conference was quite something. Thank you very much, Obunuinyong. I have acknowledged you. Allow us to take this last question before we come to you. And allow me first to probably take this to Dr. Acheng. And then maybe we will hear from Advocate Owo, because he's actively on the forefront as well. What is the impact of the unconstitutional changes on government since 2020? and has or can mediation be used? Dr. Achieng, I think I will start with you.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador Wanjiku, for highlighting that question. The unconstitutional changes in government, can mediation be used to sort of deal with these issues? We need to understand the place of mediation in a lot of things. Mediation actually works even in places that have had conflicts that seemingly are so beyond, even the conception that people see. The problem with mediation, some people think mediation is something, that can only be applied in small term sort of conflicts, in little conflicts between small groups in the community and whatnot. But mediation is something that can be applied in a wide range of conflicts, even within counterterrorism, mediation is being introduced. I mean, in what context can mediation really not work, Even in terms of, the conflicts that arise because of this unconstitutional means, because, I mean, we need to look at the, sort of issues that arise out of the state, sometimes have these state-centric sort of mechanisms that people see that, oh, perhaps we need to go to court, perhaps we need to do this. But we've had, even in the issues of historical injustices, aspects of, transitional justice mechanisms being adopted in this. And I mean, for us to speak about things like transitional justice mechanisms, then there's a lot of humility that needs to be brought on the table to look at these conflicts, in this state, how can we address that using mediation, for instance? Because mediation involves people sitting side by side, but sitting side by side in what way? We need to sit side by side with a lot of humility. Look at the Gashasha courts and the way it happened in Rwanda after the genocide, where they used the community, and the judges who were sitting in the Gashasha courts were not essentially judges in the legal sense. These were community people that were sitting side by side to try and mediate, and address the root causes of these conflicts. And people came up with apologies and came up with all these mechanisms that sort of brought back harmony within this community. So I don't think it's something that is far-fetched. Sometimes states really shy away from, mediation processes sometimes, especially when it's under things to do with unconstitutionality and historical injustices, because they don't see essentially the place for it. But since we were talking about all these mechanisms that are, alternative dispute resolution, Africa-driven mechanisms, and we are in Africa, I think these are things that we can actually do to heal the community and to sort of restore the social harmony that is essentially broken by some of these authoritarian messages, authoritarian practices that come out of the state. But I think a lot of research still has to be done, and government has to be open to adopt some of these policies and understand the solutions come from the community, not essentially from the state.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Achieng. Solutions come from the community and not the state. They are custodians, or to use Professor's word, our handlers. Allow me to go to Advocate Aluoch to chime in on that, and then I'll circle back to Professor, because I'm sure this is a conversation he must have come across at the end of the day. Over to you, Advocate.
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador Wanjiku. Just a build up on what Dr. Achieng has spoken of on the impact of unconstitutional changes in government. The first impact that usually happens across is economic uncertainty and also legal uncertainty, because once there is a sort of coup and the person gets to power through a coup d'etat, mostly military coup d'etat, what happens is that the people are uncertain on what laws then shall be implemented now that the constitution itself has been violated in a particular forum, because the proper handover mechanism of power is usually elections. An electoral process is usually conducted by an electoral body, and this is what sanitizes the leadership choices in different countries, or rather upholds what is called democracy. So in the instance where there is an unconstitutional change in power or an unconstitutional takeover in power, what would now happen is that many a times conversations become quite difficult. And by the time you want to look at mediation as a process of perhaps resolving these particular issues, you will find that the iceberg beneath, remember the reference of the iceberg, the tip at the top was quite small, but beneath was too long, could actually touch the ocean floor. So you will find that the particular resolution is more often than not irreversible. So the point at which one would inject mediation is from the onset, not to wait until the conflict has escalated to the point of coup happening so that people can get change. It's from the onset. The moment you start seeing the signs, we usually say the moment you see smoke somewhere, it means there is a fire. So the moment you start seeing the signs of the times that things are about to get heavier and heavier, the moment, like for instance, in Kenya, you start seeing more and more people going into protests, that means it's a sign for conversations to begin, not for conversations to be dismissed. So at that particular juncture, the leaders of the day must not ignore what the people are saying, because they're actually there because of the people. They're not there because of their own personal interests. So the unconstitutional changes create such uncertainty, and at the end, they require that the conversation begins before the escalation of conflict. And that is usually where mediation comes in. Mediation requires expertise that the mediator or the mediators are able to pick the moment there is an escalation within that mediation room. So even the moment somebody sees this tension on the ground, the first proposal is, can we have conversations at the boardroom before they escalate to a point of lack of control? So mediation indeed has a role, but it has a role from the onset before things get bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, our advocate on the call. Indeed, sometimes the conflicts, we try to inject mediation maybe too late into the conflict cycle. Thank you very much. Allow me to take first the question from Obununyong. Your hand is up, and then I can ask Professor to chime into the earlier conversation and probably respond to your comments. Over to you. Obununyong, if you can hear me? Yes, over to you.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Good afternoon, Ambassador.
Oh my, I should have addressed you appropriately. I think it's Professor, if not Doctor. I recognize it. My apologies.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm not a professor. Neither am I a doctor. I'm a legal practitioner and a CEDA certified mediator. And I'm also a restorative justice practitioner. And I'm joining from Uyo in Nigeria. I thank you so much for giving me this space to, well, mine may not really be a question, but I just want to shortly share my thoughts on the conference and theme, which is all about helping using mediation and trade in Africa, for economic recovery. I think that's what this conference seems to achieve at the end of the day. Now, Professor Olagunju has made so much comment about me. I want to thank him for his comments concerning me, and I also want to appreciate all the speakers, their contribution. I've really learned so much, from this since when this session started. Now, since we are all talking about mediation and trade in Africa to ensure that there's an economic recovery in Africa at the end of the day, because we find out that with the level of trade in the continent now, yes, with the level of trade in the continent, we have after which has united a whole 54 nations into one market. Trade will explode, dispute will explode. And the future of mediation, which is one of the tools in ADR, is not in London. It is in the circle under the mango tree, now powered by Zoom. I just want to start from Prof's last comments on the role of women in mediation, in dispute settlement in Africa. When I think about the role of women in ADR practice and also in peace building, I think of my grandmother's compound in Nigeria. She had no law degree, no certificate. But when two families are ready to fight over land, she gathered the women, sat them in a circle, and asked one question: what do you need to move forward? That is mediation, which is one of the tools in ADR. That is peace building. That is the Nigerian women doing this work long before we had the name for it. Now, I'm just going to give a Nigerian perspective on it. And in this Nigerian, I will just point out three things. First, women are first responders and custodians of indigenous area, like the Iyaloja settles market dispute in Yoruba land. The Umuada resolves family dispute in Igbo communities. Settle disputes in Igbo communities. The Magajiya brings order in Hausa society. These women stop dispute from ever reaching courts. So mediation, or you say ADR, is not new in Nigeria. Women have practiced it for centuries, just without the title. Secondly, Nigerian women now bridge grassroots wisdom with global tools. We are in multi-door courthouses, and Nigerian Bar Association Institute for Continuing Legal Education and Dispute Resolution panels using ancestral mediation and arbitration rules. Nigeria domesticated the New York Convention 1948 for arbitration award, and signed the Singapore Convention of 2018 for mediated settlement. AFTA has opened 54 borders for trade. So when dispute cross borders, Nigerian women deliver agreements that travel. We move between the boardroom and the village square. That dual access is our unique strength. Third point I want to make is the barriers are real, but the shift is here. Yes, women still face bias. Women are too emotional. Few briefs for high-stake disputes. But since United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, and with more women as sons, judges, and neutrals trained in all citral roles, and both the conventions, that the New York Convention, the Singapore Conventions, the narrative is changing. I just came from a victim-centered restorative justice summit recently. One lesson stayed with me. Justice started by asking, who was harmed? What do they need? Nigerian women have been asking that question in our homes and communities all along. So, giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts, I'll say this. Peace building in Africa fails because mediation, ADR, is all about peace building. Peace building in Africa fails when we exclude those who feel conflict first and heal communities fastest. The role of women is no longer auxiliary. We are central, just like Professor Alagunji said. He said that women must be put at the center. We are central. Give us the mic, the mandate, the global tools, and watch Africa heal faster. In conclusion, let me just chip in. Somebody asked a question, was talking about what Africa, that is between mediation in trade disputes in Africa. How do we, what's the advantage of mediation in handling trade disputes when you compare it with our traditional African dispute mechanisms? I think what we need is an African a roadmap. Yeah, we need a future, that is, in our future area, we need a continental roadmap. And I would just give 3 roadmaps. Now, we have our own traditional African dispute mechanism. Time will fail me to, go into it. But I will just say this: the roadmap I would suggest are on 3 pillars. 1, recognize circle. You remember I mentioned circle in my grandmother's in the story. When I was growing up with my grandmother. Pillar 1, recognize circle and Zoom as infrastructure. First, let African Union and ECOWAS recognize traditional area structures as legal infrastructure, like roads and courts, the village square, the palace, the Queen Mother's Court, that's in Ghana, and Zoom. Form them, train them, link them. Nigeria's customary courts, Ghana's Queen's Mother, South Sudan's elder councils. These together form Africa's first mile justice system. Pillar 2, we are going to mandate COLA. In our own African, one of the dispute mechanism that is used, like my grandmother, when she gathers the women in a circle, she will ask they should bring cola. And cola symbolizes peace. When you share cola, it symbolizes you want resolution of the dispute. So the pillar 2, I'm saying that we should mandate cola and contracts together with convention for hybrid enforcement. That was what Professor Olagunji said, that the 2 should be merged. Yes, both the foreign dispute resolution method should be merged with the Africans. We should not abandon our own African dispute resolution system. So we'll have hybrid enforcement for that. So we must seal agreements 4 ways: COLA for the heart, contract for the courts, convention for the world, uncitral rules, uncitral for the rules. COLA binds the conscience under the mango or the Iroko tree. Yes. Contract binds the hand in writing. Convention binds the deal across borders. Uncitral rules gives us the trusted global procedure. Nigeria already shows the way. We codified the New York Convention of 1958 for arbitration and the Singapore Convention of 2018 for mediation. We draft using all citral mediation and arbitration rules. The playbook trusted in 160 countries. So our African model is simple. Seal with COLA for moral force, draft with all citral contract for procedure, anchor with convention, the Singapore Convention for global force. So what do we have? COLA, contract, convention. They all lead to hybrid enforcement that travels from my village to Vienna. Court judgment drag in enforcement. They drag the court judgments alone, drag in enforcement. COLA, contract, and convention makes the deal stick. Uganda's Mato Ubud and Lagos market settlements already prove it. Compliance jumps when the heart, the hand, and the wall agree. And then lastly, the third pillar, empower elders, women, and community as first responders. Empower elders and women and community institutions as ADR first responders. Don't replace them. Yes. Resource them. Train Iyaloja Bale, Queen Mothers on modern ADR ethics and digital tools. Because elder, women, and community, they have used their wisdom for decades, and the community enforces the agreement. That's cheaper than police, faster than court. My charge to this conference, I just leave the conference with 3 guidelines. I enjoin the African Union and ministers of justice here present to put this in your ADR guidelines. Guideline 1, recognize community ADR structures as first-tier centers. Link them to courts through referral protocols. Guideline 2, require hybrid settlements. Every agreement must have COLA for conscience. Unicitral contract for procedure. Singapore Convention alignment for enforceability. That was what Professor Lagunji said, that we other African countries have not really signed to this convention and enjoin the ambassador to talk to, through her advocacy to, convince other Africans to sign all these, to sign the foreign convention, like the Singapore Convention that works. So, bind the heart, bind the hand, bind the wall. And then the last one, guideline 3. Fund and train traditional ADR custodians as certified ADR first responders. Wisdom and tools will certainly lead to justice at scale. And in conclusion, because the future of ADR It's not in London. It is in the circle under the Iroko tree, now powered by Zoom. Africa's roadmap. Old wisdom, new tools, one continent. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. That is exceptionally wonderful and inspiring and also insightful. I don't know whether I'm the only one who's asking whether you have a paper written somewhere that we could all read and use as our roadmap, because again, that would form an exceptionally powerful tool to be able to allow us to close. So thank you very much. If you do have, kindly inbox it or share it, or I have also asked for your contacts so we can further engage you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know we have overshot time. I'd ask for 50.
I will sign it. I will sign it.
Thank
I will
you.
sign it. Yeah.
Thank you. So allow me to bring us to a close. This is one of those I tell women in ADR, or my boss is on the call. I think we maybe put too little time for this conversation, but there's always another time. So allow me to go straight to the parting shot so that we end to go towards the close. Allow me to start with the Advocate Award. Kindly share your parting shot with us.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I'll keep mine quite brief, and it's a challenge to everyone so that they can just leave with a practical takeaway from the conversation today. And the question we should be asking ourselves is, what is your role in whichever space you're currently sitting? Whether you're a mediator, whether you're a technical professional, it doesn't matter. What is your role in contributing towards mediation nationally and internationally, towards economic growth in a trade-driven economy? That is the parting shot I would leave.
Thank you very much. A call to action and a challenge. What role are you playing to the wider agenda? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Allow me to go straight to Dr. Cheng. Kindly share with us your parting shot, and if there's anything else you'd like to add.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador. And again, thank you very much for inviting me to this very insightful forum. You know, I've learned a lot myself, even from my other participants and colleagues that have given very insightful, sentiments here. So for me, my parting shot, from my own positionality as a decolonial scholar, it's an introspection. It's a call to introspect within ourselves as Africans and ask ourselves, where essentially does our Africanity begin and end? Because with the whole aspects of introductions of Western models and modernity, even in the way that we conduct ourselves in trade, trade conflicts, we need to ask ourselves, does our Africanity, end whenever conflicts arise, because we've seen an instance where, sometimes we switch, we have this ability of switching, even who we are. And we sort of leave our Africanity, we reserve it for some other special occasions. And we forget that even in times of conflict, we need to sit there as Africans and think about who we are, even in times of conflict. Does our Africanity begin and end whenever conflicts arise? That is something that we really have to think about, so that we are walking confidently and we don't see conflicts as essentially something disruptive, because when we invoke the whole concept of conflict, given the scholars who looked at the issues of conflict is not necessarily a bad thing, even when it happens in terms of, the trading space. It is something that is can be seen as positive because it brings about positive change. It brings about vibrant economies, because it helps us to see the gaps that actually are in the way, are in the way that we deal with other people and deal with our communities and deal with different countries. So that is my take home. Conflicts essentially good, even in trade, because they expose all the gaps that we need to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Acheng. Where does our Africanity start and end? Thank you very much. Allow me to go to you, Professor. I think there are a couple of questions that you could have chimed in earlier as you do your closing remarks. Kindly also speak to the clarity. I got a clarification here. The question was about how do we deal with interjurisdictional ideology across Africa and how women weave and mediate conflict. So as you're giving your closing remarks, kindly also speak to that. It was part of the earlier question. Thank you very much, and over to you, Professor.
Yes. The takeaway for me is what Dr. Cheng said. Do you live your Africanity, when you are faced with conflict? And we do that because of ignorance. Forgive me. So to heal that, we need to study African dispute resolution jurisprudence. I too, like Joy, I will send in my research on that to our handlers today. Secondly, if Africa rejects the convention, the Singapore Convention, what happens when Africa has to enforce disputes in convention countries? Can we rely on it? Finally, I think that what somebody said earlier on, I think it was Ambassador, about humility. Humility. If you have invited me today, is because when I came back from England as a Chevening scholar, as LLM and all that, as first ADR, as the Western people will see me, ADR practitioner probably in Africa, if I had not gone back to all the elders, like Joyce Mother practice, which is, I assure you, you see it in my research, is the same thing all over Africa. I'm very confident about that fact. If I had not gone back to look at what are they saying in Southern Africa, what are they saying in Western and Northern Africa, you will not have me here today in this great conference. And so I'm asking us to humble ourselves. In fact, one or two of the questions we are asking about whether mediation should be applied in political conflicts like coups and so on, it shows that we do not know, that we don't have any other thing. So I urge us to please go back to our fathers. You don't have to come to Yoruba elder, my father and mother Yoruba. You don't have to come to West Africa. Right there where you are, look at what the elders are doing. And if they've lost it to the courts because of colonialism and slavery and all that, it's okay. Look at their saying, look at their writings. It is still there. Thank you very much.
Indeed, thank you very much, Professor. In fact, we have a saying in my culture that if you are afraid of the smoke in your grandmother's kitchen or the smell of tobacco that your grandfather is taking, you will remain ungrounded and lack the wisdom of the ancients that has passed through generations that allowed you to be present today. So allow me to say a very big thank you, and just as a quick recap, indeed, we have traveled from ideology to practicality to research based on the brilliant scholars we have on the call to the courtroom. But one thing has remained true. Above all, we've been challenged. What is your role? Are you going to go back to your roots? And most importantly, mediation is not the purview of the few. In fact, if we embed it should we choose and should we dare, not, or should we have the courage to embed it within our ecosystems traditionally, as we like to refer them to, or indigenously, we will find that not only will our communities thrive, but our trade will thrive. Thank you very much. And at this point in time, allow me to invite Phyllis from Women in ADR to kindly give us the closing remarks. And thank you very much for joining us. We know you had to rush from another engagement, but again, thank you very much. And I yield the floor to you. We deeply, deeply appreciate you. My speakers, kindly allow us to call you back again, and we look forward to receiving the material. Thank you very much. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Wow, 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 wow. Is it our communities to thrive or our trade? Thank you. I caught the last half of it all, and we have been challenged. The performance, the representation, the thoughts, the questions, they are all at another level. And I'm just like really, really wowed at the depth, the articulation of all that was presented to us today. And I'm sure everyone who has stayed on, actually very few people have dropped. It's because we have been empowered. We have been empowered in one way or the other. We are going to look at our mediation. We thought we knew, but we realized we can know better. Madam, I don't do Nigerian names. I tend to mess my people know. But Madam, our legal practitioner, we really appreciate that paper. We want to read it and see how we can integrate it into our research. Prof. Olajide, thank you very much. We really, really appreciate your thoughts and all about humility. You're spot on. And we're also going to look at your articles and see how to integrate it into our systems. Dennis Award, we appreciate your legal contribution, whereby you're talking about compliance, complementary, some things that we take for granted, the element of ownership, very critical that we look at it. And then Dr. Shali, ever articulate, Africanicity, where are we beginning and where are we ending? We've really been wowed by all the speakers today. We shall make sure we have our recording maybe on YouTube so that for those who could not follow can follow it again. We will follow up on all the publications and see how we can continue to interact and leverage on all our strengths. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. And for all in the house today, just a reminder that we are having a few more webinars towards our moot court in August with USIU. The next one will be on 9th July. The topic is mediation skills for consensus building in trade disputes. So we hope you shall all be able to join us, and also other people will be able to join us. Today we are a little few, particularly because of Maandamano in Kenya, but I know people are going to catch up on the recordings. So let us also just prepare for the 9th. And the wealth of information that we have gathered today, I can assure you, panelists, we are not going to let it drop. We'll make full use of that in all other areas that we are in. Particularly in the space of trade. Actually, I was in another webinar just earlier in the morning, whereby the traders were complaining, or the panelists were saying, it's not even the tariffs that have issues. What is even disturbing the women, because again, it was about women, what is even a bigger issue are the non-tariff barriers. They are really an issue where there are delays and all that. The issue of policy and advocacy, all of these things have to be integrated to make after effective and efficient in Africa. The only question then I'd ask is, now we are talking about Singapore being very African in one way or the other. Why don't we change the word so that we are not very, people are not hesitating towards it, because ADR is actually African. Now, if Singapore has so much of an African element, if you're calling it Singapore Convention, then you find some of us who are inclined towards Africanicity might not even want to open the page and see what it's talking about. Because I do know that there are some scholars who have not looked up at that convention. Maybe we need to tweak the heading a little so that it sounds a little more encompassing, because Singapore is not Africa, so that Africa can embrace it more. Food for thought. Otherwise, thank you very much. We really, really appreciate the presentations, the depth, the quality of the conversations that we have had today, and we hope we can engage again in future. Thank you, and thank you very much for all the participants that you've been able to stay on till this time. We really appreciate our wonderful moderator. Thank you very, very much. We really, really appreciate. And we hope you can share with us your papers and we can see how to share them out with our members. Thank you. I think that's it. Apart from 9th, we shall also have another webinar on, what is the right date? Is it 20th of July? As we have our webinar around 18th of August. Just a minute, let me confirm the date for the next webinar. But it is in late July. But there is one that will be 9th. I've just said the heading. The topic is mediation skills for consensus building in trade disputes. And then we shall also have another one on 30th of July as we prepare for the Moot with USIU. We shall be reaching out for judges, and we hope that you shall respond and accept so that we can mentor the young people and we can be effective as mediators in Africa and be internationally sought after, just as Kofi Annan was internationally sought after, an African icon that we can always look up to. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Eunice, is any other water person here, or we close it at that? Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you as well. We close it for now. We really had a fantastic session, and I'm hoping that we'll have another one with the same speakers. Amazing.
A repeat of the speakers. Wow, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and do have a good day, good evening, and or good night, depending on where you're dialing in from. Asanteni sana.
Asante, Ambassador. Feel free to exit.
Mm-hmm.